The night my brother tried to ground me like a child was the same night he lost everything. He stood up at the dinner table, pointed at me, and shouted, "You don't leave this house until you apologize and sign." Everyone laughed. So I stood up, smiled once, and said, "Okay." They thought that meant I'd obey. What it really meant was that I was done saving them. My name is Lena Parker. I'm 28 years old. For 8 long years, I carried my entire family on my back, not just financially, but emotionally and legally. I paid the bills no one asked questions about, solved problems no one thanked me for, cleaned up messes I didn't create. To them, I wasn't the backbone. I was just there, convenient, dependable, invisible, background noise in my own life. They laughed at my silence. They mistook my loyalty for weakness, and they believed I would always sign whatever they put in front of me, no matter the cost to me. They were wrong. Because this is the story of the one signature I refused to give, the moment I finally said no, and how that single decision exposed every lie, collapsed every illusion, and brought down the life they were living on my sacrifice. This is what happens when the person holding everything together finally lets go. It was a Friday night, the kind my family had every single week. Same long dining table, same carefully arranged plates, same rehearsed smiles pretending nothing was wrong. From the outside, my parents' house still looked impressive. Brick walls, tall windows, a perfectly trimmed lawn. The kind of place that made neighbors think success lived there. But I knew the truth. I knew every mortgage payment, every quiet transfer, every bill that had been saved at the last minute by money that never belonged to them. We were halfway through dessert when it happened. Silverware clinked, laughter hovered in the air, and then my sister-in-law Marissa reached into her bag. She slid a thick folder across the table toward me. Not rushed, not nervous. Careful. She smiled, the kind of smile people use when they think the answer is already yes. "Just paperwork," she said lightly. "Sign it so Ryan can close his investment deal." Every conversation at the table stopped. Not loudly, not suddenly, just waiting. I opened the folder. Page 1, paragraph 3, and my stomach dropped. The words were familiar, too familiar. Legal language I'd written myself once, twisted, repackaged, and aimed straight at me. I kept reading. My pulse slowed. My hands didn't shake, because I understood exactly what they were asking me to give away, and what I would lose the moment the pen touched paper. I closed the folder. The sound echoed louder than it should have. I looked up. I'm not signing this. Silence. The kind that hangs in the air right before something breaks. The room went silent. Not awkward silence, not confused silence. The kind that presses against your chest and waits to see who's going to break first. Then my brother Ryan slammed his hand on the table. The glasses rattled, silverware jumped, dessert plates slid an inch closer to the edge. "You'll stay right here until you apologize," he shouted, his face flushed red. "You don't embarrass us like this." Not ask, not discuss. Like I was still a child. Like I hadn't been the one quietly keeping this house standing for years. My father let out a laugh, sharp, dismissive. He shook his head like he was watching bad theater. "Unbelievable," he muttered, amused. "Always has to make things about herself." My mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She just nodded slowly, lips pressed together in that familiar way, the look she wore whenever siding with them was easier than protecting me. "Listen to your brother," she said softly. "Stop being dramatic. You're ruining the evening." 8 years ago, those words would have crushed me. I would have apologized, signed whatever they put in front of me, swallowed the humiliation and told myself it was for the family. But something inside me didn't bend this time. It snapped. The fear that had lived in my chest for years, the one that told me I'd lose everything if I said no, went completely silent. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every eye followed me. I looked at Ryan, then my parents, then the folder still sitting on the table like a loaded weapon. "All right," I said. Not angry, not shaking. Calm. The kind of calm that scares people, because it means the decision has already been made. And without another word, I turned my back on the table, on the house, on the people who thought they owned me, and I walked out. They thought I was running away. They had no idea. I was about to take everything with me. They thought I was broke adjacent, not struggling, just close enough that no one expected much from me. The quiet one, the practical one, the daughter who worked some vague remote tech job no one ever bothered to understand. Decent money, my mother would say to guests, nothing flashy. And that was exactly how they liked it. Because asking questions would have meant facing answers they didn't want. They never asked how the bills kept getting paid, never asked why the bank stopped calling, never asked how a family that had supposedly lost everything somehow kept upgrading its life. They just enjoyed the results. What they never questioned, because it was easier not to, was how I paid for everything that made their world look intact. The mortgage, rescued month after month from the edge of foreclosure. The renovations, quietly funded while they bragged about the house holding its value. The cars that appeared in the driveway like magic. The trips, the weddings, the photos posted with smiling captions and fake gratitude. The lifestyle they wore like it was earned. 8 years ago, when my father's business collapsed, the truth arrived in the mail. Foreclosure notices, final warnings, red-stamped envelopes stacked on the kitchen counter like a countdown. Every week, another letter. Every week, another deadline. That was when I stepped in. Not with speeches, not with conditions. Quietly. Every month, $5,200 left my account and landed in theirs. Just enough to keep the house standing. Just enough to make the panic disappear. When the roof caved in during a winter storm, I didn't argue. I wired the money. When the SUV died on the highway, I didn't hesitate. A new one appeared in the driveway days later. When Ryan decided he deserved a luxury wedding abroad, white sand, private villa, champagne sunsets, I covered every dollar. Flights, venue, guests, the kind of wedding people still talk about years later. They toasted my parents for their generosity, posted photos thanking mom and dad for making it all possible. I stood just outside the frame, unmentioned, uncredited, expected to stay that way. Because as long as they didn't acknowledge me, they didn't have to face the truth, that the life they were so proud of was built on money they never earned and power they never realized could disappear overnight. What they never knew was this: I didn't find money. I built it. At 22, while they still thought of me as the dependable background character, I was sitting on my bed with a secondhand laptop, writing code late into the night. No investors, no safety net, no applause. Just an idea, a cybersecurity system designed to detect threats before they happened. I started in my bedroom because that was the only place I could work without being watched, questioned, or dismissed. I never put my name on the company. No interviews, no press releases, no founder spotlights. I filed everything through trusts and holding entities, layered carefully, legally, deliberately. Within 3 years, the company was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Enterprise contracts, global clients, boardrooms that never knew my...
And I stayed invisible on purpose, because anonymity kept me safe from family expectations, from entitlement, from people who would have felt entitled to take once they realized what I had. Because being underestimated gave me something far more valuable than praise. While they saw a quiet woman with a modest job, I held leverage they didn't even know existed. While they issued commands at the dinner table, I owned the infrastructure that kept their life standing. They mistook my silence for weakness. They never realized it was strategy. And that misunderstanding was about to cost them everything. A year ago, Ryan came to me with what he called his startup. He didn't come humbly, he came confidently, the way people do when they assume help is already guaranteed. He had a pitch deck, mock-ups, big words he'd memorized from podcasts and conference panels. He said he just wanted advice. I trust you, he told me. You're good with this stuff. So I listened. And then I saw the cracks. The core security architecture was flawed, not a small bug, but a structural weakness that would have collapsed the entire system under real-world pressure. I could have pointed it out and walked away. Instead, I stayed up late for 3 nights straight. I rewrote critical parts of his security system, quietly, carefully, for free. I treated it like family help, like something you don't invoice for, like something that doesn't need credit. I never imagined he would turn that gift into a weapon. But that same code, my work, was now buried deep inside the paperwork Marissa slid across the table, wrapped in legal language, disguised as technical certification. One signature. That's all it would have taken. One signature would have handed Ryan permanent ownership of technology worth more than he would ever understand. Technology protected, refined, and proven inside a company he didn't even know existed. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't explain the clause. They didn't even warn me. Because in their minds, it wasn't theft. It was entitlement. They assumed I'd sign, the same way they assumed I'd pay, the same way they assumed I'd stay quiet, the same way they assumed I belonged to them. they underestimated the difference between generosity and surrender.
And that assumption was the moment everything began to fall apart. Not in rush, not in panic, methodically. Because the truth was, my real life hadn't lived in that house for 4 years. It wasn't in the guest room they still called my room. It wasn't in the closets filled with things I never touched. It wasn't in the family photos where I always stood just outside the center. My real life existed in encrypted drives, secure servers, quiet boardrooms, places no one in that house had ever bothered to ask about. So I packed light. Clothes, a few personal items, the things that actually mattered. At 3 a.m., I opened my laptop one last time under that roof. Every payment I had ever set up, every silent rescue, every invisible safety net, ended with a single confirmation click. The mortgage, the insurance policies, the credit cards they treated like extensions of themselves. Gone. No speeches, no warnings, just the truth, finally applied. I left my house key on the counter, right beside the mail they never opened and the bills they never read. And when I stepped outside, the door closed softly behind me. No dramatic slam, no tears. I didn't look back. Because walkaways don't need witnesses. And I knew by morning they wouldn't be asking where I went. They'd be asking how everything disappeared. By morning, chaos hit. Not all at once, but in waves. The first knot came just after sunrise. The lawyer arrived before anyone had finished their coffee, briefcase in hand, face tight with urgency. He didn't sit. He didn't soften his words. He asked one question that drained the color from the room. "What did you sign last night?" Before they could answer, the phone started ringing. The bank was first, then another, and another. Mortgage payments missed. Accounts frozen. Credit line suspended pending review. The tone shifted from polite concern to formal language fast. By mid-morning, the repossession truck pulled into the driveway. Metal chains, tow hooks. Ryan ran outside, shouting, waving his arms like he could stop it with noise alone. He learned what authority actually looks like when paperwork beats entitlement. Inside, his phone lit up nonstop, but not with congratulations. His investment deal began collapsing within hours. The security certification had been revoked. Due diligence flagged inconsistencies. Funding was paused, then pulled. What had looked like a sure win the night before unraveled in real time. My parents finally learned the truth they'd avoided for years. The house hadn't been secure. It had been floating, month to month, on money they never earned and never asked about. There was no reserve, no backup plan, no quiet transfer coming to save them. And for the first time in their lives, there was no safety net, because the person who built it had walked away. They called. They begged. They blamed. I didn't answer. Within months, the house was lost. The startup folded. The lifestyle disappeared. They now live small, quiet lives. I don't. 10 months later, I signed a partnership deal worth 9 figures. Same car, same clothes, different future. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped holding them up. Being kind doesn't mean being owned. And family doesn't get to steal from you just because they share your blood. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is all right, and walking away.